On behalf of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology and President Heather Wilson, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this 6th annual Mines Medal Dinner and Award Ceremony. I am Helene Duhamel with Coda Territory News, and I'll be your MC for this evening. And to begin tonight's program, please stand for the posting of the colors by Army ROTC Color Guard cadets, Justin Gelling, Will Cronk, Ethan Stewart, and Sam Wentee. Gentlemen, please remove your hats.
Mark time. Mark. Permission to post colors.
Post the colors.
Forward. March. Left. Left.
And please remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Paul Blasey. Paul.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Paul Blasey. Thank you, Paul. While dinner is being served, I would like to welcome our distinguished guests joining us this evening. When I call your name, and please be seated. When I call your name, would you please stand to be recognized? And we are so pleased to welcome this evening Governor Dennis Daugaard and First Lady Linda. Rapid City Mayor Sam Koiker. Joyce Wiley, mother of our medalist. We would also like to extend heartfelt appreciation to all of you for being here this evening, and most especially for the sponsors who have helped make this event possible. Will Platinum sponsors and former School of Mines President and First Lady, Dr. Richard and Nancy Gowan, please stand. If you would, please take time to review the names of all our event sponsors in our event program. And I now invite you to enjoy this evening's meal, prepared and served by Aramark. The Mines Medal Award was established by former School of Mines president Robert Wharton in 2009 to recognize exceptional engineers and scientists who expand the frontiers of knowledge for the advancement of society and the betterment of our world. The Mines Medal Medallion was designed by School of Mines faculty and staff and includes images of the Homestake Gold Mine, a Black Hills grape leaf, and a silhouette of the Black Hills. Materials used in the medallion include Black Hills gold, silver, and copper. The display base for the medallion was manufactured by LG Everest of Sioux Falls. It is made of pink quartzite, pink Sioux quartzite mined in eastern South Dakota. And now please join me in welcoming President Heather Wilson.
Thank you, Helene. And to all of our guests, thank you all for being here this evening. This is our 6th Mines Medal ceremony, and I hope it's not as memorable as last year. The School of Mines is grounded in the disciplines of engineering, science, and mathematics. Our nation desperately needs the well-prepared scientists and engineers who graduate from our school in order to meet the challenges of the 21st century. 154 companies were on our campus last week to recruit our students. That's the most ever. And 34 of those companies were South Dakota companies. Our growing student body includes students from 37 countries and 45 states. We develop leaders in engineering and science for the state, the region, the nation, and the world. And as the students in this room will confirm, there are no easy degrees at Mines. Any trig students here? No? That's because they're all home doing their homework. Now, I was coming out of a classroom building one day, and I asked a student how things were going. And he said, "My head hurts." And I asked him why, and he said, "Heat transfer with Dr. Pashinsky." The amazing thing was he was smiling, and it was almost as if he knew his head was supposed to hurt with Dr. P. I was in the Surbeck building, in the Surbeck Center, talking to students shortly after I arrived at Mines, and there was a senior who was working, helping to grade some papers, and he told me that his friends who went to Ivy Leagues had to be good to get in, but almost everyone there gets A's and B's. And he said, here, it's really hard to get an A. And then he went on to say that it should be hard. And he said with that kind of endearing gravity and certainty for a 20-year-old, "You know, Dr. Wilson, no one should graduate with a mechanical engineering degree without really having mastered the mechanics of solids." Well, industry knows that too. And that's probably why our average starting salary from the School of Mines is higher than Harvard's, and Yale's, and Cornell's, and Princeton's, and Brown's, and all but 12 other universities in America. And it's not just in our classrooms that we demand excellence. Last year, The Atlantic magazine published an article highlighting 3 universities in America for our hands-on approach to teaching science and engineering. Rochester Polytech, Georgia Tech, who I understand have a pretty good fight song, and South Dakota Mines. We don't just study steel, we forge it. We don't just design concrete beams, we pour them. We don't just write computer control programs, we build machines and try them out. We fly things and sink things, break things and build things, and we even blow things up. And those of you in chemical engineering know who I'm talking about. 17% of our undergraduates are engaged in externally funded research. Our undergraduates are engaged in externally funded research. Our graduate students in fields like chemical engineering, nanomaterials, geology, and particle physics are pushing back the frontiers of knowledge. Your support for the Mines Medal Dinner and Awards Ceremony assists our best and brightest students in pursuing research at the School of Mines. I am proud tonight to acknowledge Stephen Schneiderman as this year's Mines Medal Graduate Fellow. Stephen is a doctoral candidate in chemical and biological engineering from Magnolia, Minnesota. After earning an associate's degree in pre-engineering from Minnesota West Community and Technical College in 2008, he transferred to the South Dakota School of Mines, and he earned his bachelor's degree in chemical engineering in 2010. Using his farming background as inspiration, Stephen focused his research on fundamental and applied process development to produce renewable fuels from biomass, such as wood waste, grasses, and corn stover. As part of his research, he has investigated continuous fermentation with biocatalyst recycle as a means to improve productivity and overall process economics. He's published 4 peer-reviewed papers as the lead or major contributing author, and has completed 2 manuscripts on his advanced fermentation research for submission this summer. Dr. Todd Menkhaus, one of his nominators and employers, actually told us in his application that Stephen has a cot up in the chemistry building for when he needs to stay up all night to run experiments. Todd, you probably shouldn't have told us that. Dr. Menkhaus says that Stephen's tremendous work ethic, outstanding ambition, and aptitude to solve problems has led to some of the most successful projects that he has been involved with. As a research engineer for Nanofiber Separations, LLC, Stephen has developed and evaluated cellulose fiber membranes modified by surface treatments. Somebody at the chemi table is going to have to explain what that means. The advanced materials allow for highly efficient purification of biological compounds and contaminated water, and they're being used by pharmaceutical companies to reduce the cost of producing medicine. He plans to continue his work at Nanofiber Separations after completing his PhD. Stephen Schneiderman, on behalf of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology and our faculty, it is my privilege to present you with the 2014 Mines Medal Fellowship and wish you continued success in all of your research endeavors.
Thank you. This is a great honor to receive this award. I just wanted to briefly thank some of the people who have had an influence on me during my time here at the School of Mines. First of all, the professors that nominated me, Dr. Gilcrease and Dr. Menkhaus. I've worked closely with both of them on various projects, and they've just been great mentors, teachers, and bosses to me. I'd also like to thank my department, Chemical and Biological Engineering. I feel like we just have a great community of people, and I'm fortunate to be a part of that group. And I'd also like to acknowledge my parents, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight, but they've always been really supportive of all my academic ambitions, and their guidance throughout my life has shaped who I am today. And I'd also just like to thank the School of Mines community in general. It's been really great being here and getting a degree, and I really couldn't ask for a better place to continue my graduate studies. So it's a very great honor, and thank you.
Mayor Sam Quaker was raised near Boynton, Iowa. He graduated from the University of South Dakota with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in public administration in 1998. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Quaker.
Good evening. Welcome and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. What an absolute privilege it is to help recognize Dr. Saltzman tonight and to share this stage with such brilliant minds. And I said plural, I'm including Dr. Wilson in that too. When I started reading Dr. Saltzman's biography, I found it quite intimidating, and I didn't think we had much in common. But then I realized we did. We both have last names that confound the telemarketers. And he is only slightly better at biology, chemistry, physics, math, pharmacology, and statistics than I am. He is also better at psychology than I am too, even though that was one of my majors in Vermillion, but I think psychology is overrated anyway. I used to think the brain was the most intricate part of the human body, and then I said, hey, wait a minute. Look at what's telling me that. Did you get that one? Yeah, all right. And last but not least, Dr. Saltzman and I are both from the great state of Iowa. Iowa is a great place, but it does have its share of troubles, including high taxes and ridiculous regulation, which is why our governor is so brilliantly capitalizing on this to bring as much business here as possible. Land prices have been good in northwest Iowa recently, and I've been encouraging my parents to move out of Sioux County near Boynton and move here, but that effort keeps getting vetoed by my sister in Haywarden and my brother in Sioux City, so I have given up for now. The governor and I are working on an annexation. So, my dad and I were riding through northwest Iowa a while back, and he was lamenting the state of affairs and he's in Iowa, and he said, this used to be God's country. And I said, well, he sold at the right time and moved to South Dakota. I used to feel guilty about encouraging businesses and people from my home area to move here. And then last weekend at the Buffalo Roundup, I ran into a whole bunch of people I knew from Iowa who had been invited by the governor to come here permanently, including a manufacturing company from Rock Valley. And so I said, hey, if the governor can so openly and shamelessly recruit from Iowa, then so can I. And I want to thank our governor for his efforts to encourage economic development in our state and in our region. Thank you, Governor. I won't read this entire proclamation tonight, but if you examine it later and compare it with the governor's comments, please realize that he copied from me and not the other way around. I bet you thought you were the only candidate in the governor's race not experiencing a plagiarism scandal. And he laughed at that. He thought that was good. Judy, you're not mad at me for that, are you? Is that okay? All right. And now with that, I declare today, October 2, 2014, as Dr. Mark Saltzman Day. Congratulations, Doctor, and thank you for your service to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The Mines Medal will be presented tonight by the Governor of the state of South Dakota. South Dakota's 32nd Governor, Dennis Dugard, is Dakota's #1 salesman. The governor promotes South Dakota as a great place to expand existing businesses and to locate new businesses. Under his leadership, South Dakota has enjoyed strong economic growth, and it's one of 2 states in the nation that has actually grown jobs in the last 6 years. Governor Dugard has emphasized job creation, sound fiscal management, and efficient government operations. He signed the Building South Dakota legislation in 2012, enacting the most significant change to the state's economic development program since the Mickelson administration, and has been addressing the need for a skilled workforce through the South Dakota Workforce Initiative. In the fall of 2011, Governor Dugard launched the Better Government Initiative. His intention is to reduce regulation on businesses, and that effort is cutting red tape and has eliminated 900 sections of code totaling more than 148,000 words thus far. Governor Dugard grew up between Garrettson and Del Rapids on his family's dairy farm. He graduated from Del Rapids High School, the University of South Dakota, and attended law school at Northwestern University in Chicago. After a career in the private sector, he was elected to the state legislature in 1996, and he was elected governor in 2010. Please join me in welcoming Governor Dennis Dugard.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is great to be here back at Mines and the Mines Medal. I'm pleased to say that I was here for the very first Mines Medal presentation, and this is the 6th presentation, and this is the 6th time I've been here. And I really believe in what the School of Mines does. Your mission is so important. It's so important. I meet with a lot of young people, and increasingly I have become aware how important it is for all of us to help young people understand the tremendous opportunity that awaits them in careers that are produced here at the School of Mines. Science and engineering, the STEM fields. This is your focus, and your focus is what America really needs and what South Dakota really needs. A lot of our young people, I know when I went to college, a 4-year degree was the road to heaven. And if you got a 4-year degree, whatever the degree may have been in, your odds of a successful, productive, and satisfying job were good. And today, it's still true that we need more than ever for our young people to pursue post-secondary education. But it's no longer true that just any road will get you that end you have in mind. But the roads, every road, here at the School of Mines leads to great opportunity. So I am very enthused about being here to support your university and to support your mission, because it is so tremendously important. I also want to say a thank you to all of you who are here supporting that through your presence here, through your philanthropy and other ways, and everything you do to help young people make career choices. Lynn and I have 3 kids, and we have an electrical engineer among those 3. Our daughter Sarah chose engineering. And I want to say thank you to Hanny Shaffey of Dream Design, your gold sponsor. When Sarah was in high school, she spent a fair amount of time visiting with engineers to try to decide whether that was for her. And she spent some time with Hanny, among others, and she decided, yes, that's something she wanted to pursue. And she loves her job. She loves her work. And so I've seen it close to home. I see the need for it everywhere, and I want to thank you for what you do to support the School of Mines. Now, I promised Linda there would be no Iowa jokes tonight. I'm going to focus on North Dakota. Del Rapids, where I grew up, is only about 25 miles from Iowa after all. And, you know, with all their taxes, they have enough problems. They don't need to be making jokes about Iowa. So really, North Dakota. I was, you know, South Dakota is celebrating our 125th birthday this year. We became a state 125 years ago this year. In fact, it was just yesterday that we celebrated the 125th anniversary of the adoption by the citizens of then Dakota Territory of the South Dakota Constitution on October 1st, excuse me, of 1889, South Dakota citizens from all across the state voted whether to adopt the Constitution that had been drafted by their delegates the prior July 4th. And the vote was 70,000 something to 3,000. So it was a pretty close vote, but they did adopt it. And it's a great time to be celebrating South Dakota because things are going so well for us. But enough about that. Tonight we gather to honor Dr. Mark Saltzman as the 2014 Mines Medalist. And it's my privilege to describe his biography to you, and it is impressive. Dr. Saltzman is an expert in biomedical engineering, drug delivery, tissue engineering, and gene therapy. He is the Goizueta Foundation Professor of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering and the Chair of the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Yale University. A Des Moines, Iowa native, Dr. Saltzman graduated with a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Iowa State University in 1981. He attended graduate school at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, where he received a master's degree in chemical engineering in 1984 and a PhD in medical engineering in 1987. Dr. Saltzman was appointed assistant professor of chemical engineering at Johns Hopkins University in 1987, where he was promoted through the ranks, becoming a tenured full professor 8 years later. In 1996, he was named the first BP Amico H. Lawrence Fuller Chair in Chemical Engineering at Cornell University. Dr. Saltzman moved to Yale University as the Goizueta Foundation Professor of Chemical and Biomedical Engineering in 2002 and became, as I mentioned, the founding chair of Yale's Department of Biomedical Engineering in 2003. Recognized widely for his excellence in research and teaching, Dr. Saltzman is a recipient of the Camille and Henry Dreyfuss Foundation Teacher Scholar Award, the Ellen C. Davis Medal as Maryland's Outstanding Young Engineer, the Controlled Release Society Young Investigator Award, and Iowa State University's Professional Progress in Engineering Award. He's been a fellow of the American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering, the Biomedical Engineering Society, and the National Academy of Inventors. and he served as a member of the Connecticut Academy of Science and Engineering. He has delivered over 200 lectures throughout the world, including the Britton Chance Distinguished Lecture in Engineering and Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania, and the Distinguished Lecture of the Biomedical Engineering Society. His nominator, Kyle Vanderlick, Dean of Yale School of Engineering and Applied Science, said this: Professor Saltzman has been at the forefront of developing materials and methods for controlled drug delivery, tissue engineering, and gene therapy. His work has addressed the treatment and prevention of disease and the treatment of illness and injury. In addition to his impact on improving the human condition as a result of his research, he is an inspiring educator, mentor, and colleague. Dr. Saltzman, on behalf of the state of South Dakota, I'd like to congratulate you on your exceptional research and contributions to the advancement of society with scientific knowledge. As governor, I hereby proclaim Thursday, October 2nd, today, in addition to Rapid City's proclamation, I proclaim today Dr. W. Mark Saltzman Day in the state of South Dakota, and I'm honored to present you with the 2014 Mines Medal. Dr. Saltzman.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. What a terrific introduction. Thank you very much, Governor, and thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you, President Wilson. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. I can't help but wonder after such a marvelous set of introductions as that if I wouldn't be better off just sitting down. But I'm going to press on anyway, and thank you for your generosity. It's a real pleasure for me to be here, and what I want to present to you briefly is a little bit about the story that's on the title of the slide here, how I think biomedical engineers can make better, safer methods for treating and preventing disease. And I'm going to tell you some stories about that, and I'm going to sandwich it between a little bit of personal history, if that's okay. And I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm going to start here. This is a map of most of the United States, 48 contiguous states. And I most frequently speak on the East Coast or sometimes on the West Coast, and I often have to tell people where Iowa is. I don't have to tell this crowd where Iowa is, but there it is. And I'm also sometimes asked, now that I'm getting older, how I started in this field. What brought me into science and engineering? And I don't have a good answer for that, although I can say that it started very early. This is me with my mother, who is here, Joyce Wiley, and I thank you very much, Mom, for coming. My mom has been a tremendous supporter of mine since an early age, and you can see sometimes it was real support. She's holding me off the ground in this particular image against the forces of gravity. And a little bit later in life, she took me to the library and helped me learn how to check out books, and my favorite books were those about famous people. And I appreciate that. And even later, as I was starting my career, she would frequently come and live with me to help me take care of my children, and has supported me in all kinds of ways throughout my development. So thank you, Mom. I think my interest in science started early, and it was always supported by my mother. Here you see her supporting me in an early study I did on the wear fatigue of industrial plastics. I'd tell one more story about Iowa. And this is my grandfather's farm in southern Iowa. And I'm proud to say that my brother and sister and I own a part of this farm still. And this is my grandfather, Woodrow Willis Saltzman, Woody to everybody. And he was a farmer. He grew up on a farm, on this particular farm, and went to college at the University of Iowa, where he studied civil engineering. And he wasn't able to finish his degree because he was needed back on the farm, and so he returned a little bit short of his degree in civil engineering and worked on the farm with his family for decades after that. He taught me to get up early and work hard. I think attributes that many Mines students have also learned from their families, and I appreciate that. He also, when I was graduating from Iowa State and in 1981, he and my grandmother gave me a car. It was a 1974, you got to picture this automobile, a 1974 beige Chevy Malibu with 4 doors. And it was a dream come true for me because it enabled me to move to Boston, Massachusetts, and to go to graduate school at MIT. And in that way, really transformed my life. And so I have a great appreciation for that. I have been on the East Coast ever since, and now I'm lucky to live in New Haven, Connecticut, and teach at Yale University, which is a terrific place, a place I suspect my grandfather never imagined one of his grandchildren would teach at, but he was still alive when I got the job there, and I'm sure he was proud of me, although he never really understood my hair. I'm delighted to be here in Rapid City, and having spent the last couple of days at the School of Mines. It's a terrific place, and it feels like home to me. The atmosphere here is much more like what I remember from childhood than what I experienced in the East Coast. When you're walking down the sidewalk, people smile and say hello, and that is a very nice thing. So thank you all for your hospitality. It's a pleasure to be here. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the kinds of things that we've been working on in my laboratory and the kinds of things that I've tried to accomplish over the last years. And I'll start with an example that you're all familiar with. Taking aspirin if you have a headache, or Tylenol or Motrin or whatever your preferred analgesic is. So you have a headache and you swallow a pill, and those molecules from the pill dissolve and they get absorbed into your bloodstream, and so the concentration in your body starts to rise, and that's shown in the graph on the left here. But even as the concentration is starting to rise, your body is finding ways to get rid of that drug, and the body's very good at this. And so the concentration will reach a maximum, and then it will begin to fall. There's 2 important drug levels to think about, and they're shown by the horizontal lines on this graph. The lower line is the minimum dose that you need to be effective, so you've got to get over that line. And the second line at the top is the maximum dose. Above that, you begin to see side effects, and so you want to stay below that level. So ordinarily, you have a headache, you take aspirin, you get up to a high enough level, the headache goes away, and the drug has done its job. But if this is a chronic condition and you need to continue taking drugs, when you take another drug pill, the pattern repeats itself, as shown in the graph on the right here. And so you can see peaks and valleys in concentration where there are fluctuations. And those fluctuations can be bad because sometimes you might not have enough drug to be effective, and other times you might have so much that you're beginning to experience side effects. And so we've wondered if there might not be better ways to deliver medicines where you could smooth out some of these peaks and valleys. The other problem is that some kinds of diseases are very difficult to treat with drugs, even if you could design things that release them perfectly. And most diseases that occur in the brain, and there are many that occur in the brain, and most of them are difficult to treat. Brain tumors, for example, resist most of our treatments because you just can't get drug concentrations high enough in the rest of the body for drug molecules to penetrate into the brain. The brain has what's called the blood-brain barrier, which separates the tissue of the brain from your blood circulation, and that's a good thing. It helps your brain regulate its function. But it's a bad thing when you want to get drugs into the brain to treat a condition like a brain tumor. So in the 1980s, while I was a graduate student, we started working on materials. that could provide some solutions to these kinds of problems. And one of those materials is shown here on the slide in the bottom graph. It's an implant of a polymer. It's a degradable polymer, and so if I place this in water, it would slowly dissolve over a period of about 6 months. But we engineered these materials so that we could load them with drugs. This implant that's shown in the diagram is not just polymer, but it contains about 4% of a chemotherapy drug. And as the polymer dissolves, that drug is released. And so we did a number of experiments like the one that's shown in this graph at the top. If you drop this wafer into water and you measure how much drug is released over time, we could engineer into these materials the property that they would slowly, in a controlled fashion, release drugs. You know, how would you use these kinds of things? How could you improve treatments of brain tumors? When I was first at Johns Hopkins, I was introduced to a young neurosurgeon named Henry Brem, and he had the idea that these materials might be useful for treating brain tumors. And he was a neurosurgeon, and so he was frequently removing tumors from people. And the problem is that neurosurgeons with advanced imaging can identify where the bulk of the tumor is. You can see it on this MR image. It's the white region in this particular example. And so that's how they design their surgery. They try to remove all those white areas. But there's some cells, tumor cells, that have infiltrated further into the tissue. You can't see them by these imaging methods, but they're there. And even if you remove the tumor, it will reoccur because of these cells that are left behind. So we worked with Dr. Brem to design wafers that would slowly release chemotherapy. And neurosurgeons would take these into the operating room. And after they'd finished a surgical resection of the tumor, they would place these wafers back into the resection cavity, and the patient would then leave the operating room with the bulk of the tumor removed, but with these devices in place, slowly releasing chemotherapy over the next few weeks. And the idea was that this would help kill those residual cells that had been left behind. We tested this for many years, and with the help of a pharmaceutical company, this was approved by this new approach for treating tumors was approved in 1996 under the trade name Gliadel. It's used in countries around the world now, and thousands of patients with brain tumors have had their lives extended with this drug delivery system. This is a different system that we worked on during the 1990s, and here we were taking advantage of the fact that the biotechnology industry was now producing drugs that could work in ways that we'd never experienced before. One class of drugs were antibodies. And antibodies can be designed to do many things, but one thing they can be designed to do is neutralize viruses, to trap them before they enter the body. This small sort of donut-shaped object here is a polymer, a disc-shaped polymer that's loaded with antibodies. And these antibodies neutralize a virus. The virus in this case is herpes simplex virus. These small rings are actually vaginal rings that can be used in mice. And I could tell you stories about designing vaginal rings for mice, but that's for another occasion. But these work. If a mouse places these correctly, even if they're exposed to very high infectious doses of herpes simplex virus, they don't get infected. And that effect lasts for a long time. The ring releases antibodies for many weeks, and the effect lasts as long as the ring is in place. There's been a breakthrough in design of antibodies that can neutralize HIV. You might have heard of this, a breakthrough over the last couple of years. And so we're working with colleagues at Yale to design rings like this that could be used for women to allow them to protect themselves from viruses like HIV. In the 2000s, this became a big industry. This is an example of a drug-eluting stent. You've probably heard about these. Stents are usually metal devices. They're cage-like devices that get expanded inside of an artery and help keep open an artery that is blocked, and so not allowing blood flow. So mechanically, you open it with a stent. And the revolution in the early 2000s was that you could coat these stents with polymers that slowly release drugs, and that those drugs released locally at the stent site would prevent the disease from reoccurring at that site, from the vessel re-narrowing. hundreds of thousands of people have now benefited from this technology. And I show you an example here of the next generation of stents designed by my colleagues at 480 Biomedical in Boston. The last few examples I want to give you, I think, are really going to transform medicine and the practice of medicine. And so I want to share some of these examples with you. And one of the things that we, and by we I mean people working with me in my laboratory, but also similar laboratories all over the world, have shrunk these kinds of controlled release systems down so that they're very tiny. And those tiny systems are shown here in this scanning electron micrograph. These are nanoparticles. They're about 100 nanometers in diameter. They share many of the properties I've been talking about already, except for the fact that they're very small. They're highly loaded with drugs, and they are smaller than cells in the body, smaller than bacteria. They're about the size of a virus. Virus size, but made of totally synthetic materials that are known to be safe. And they share the property that if you put them in water, they'll slowly release the drugs that you've encapsulated in them. And I show that here with a chemotherapy agent, camptothecin. So how would you use these? We think this will be the next breakthrough in brain tumor therapy and allow neurosurgeons to treat tumors that are untreatable now and treat all tumors better. One of the limitations I didn't mention about the wafer system, the gliadel system, is that drug penetration is relatively limited. Wherever you place the implant, drugs will penetrate into the tissue, but only over a very small volume. And so residual tumor cells might be farther away from the site of the implant than that, and so wouldn't get a therapy. So our idea is to give surgeons these nanoparticles that they can infuse directly into the brain. And we've shown that you can infuse them through special catheters that allow you to distribute them through whatever volume of interest you deem appropriate. And once they're infused, the particles will sit there in the tissue, and they will slowly release these drug compounds and have the same protective effect that the gliadel system does, but be more controllable and also more translatable to other situations. I think there's lots of opportunities to use this kind of technology in productive ways in medicine. And one of the reasons that I'm optimistic about it is that these are very versatile. They're small, so you could introduce them in a variety of different ways. You could introduce them through needles into any tissue in the body. You could apply them topically. They can be inhaled. They could be swallowed. And they're also smaller than human cells, and so they can enter cells. If you saw that movie while it was moving, it was a picture of cells. The cells were red, the nuclei of the cells were blue, and the green dots were nanoparticles that had entered cells after they'd just been exposed to these drug-containing particles. And you will have seen that they were everywhere inside the cells, even in the nucleus. And that allows you to think about using them as sort of Trojan horses to carry whatever you're interested in to places in the body that would be difficult to reach otherwise. Next slide. We've spent tremendous energy, and by we, I mean the people that work in my laboratory, and I'll describe that group for you in just a few moments. But we now can engineer these materials at a very high level. And because they're polymers, you can take advantage of all the chemistry and processing tricks that smart engineers have learned over the last decade in engineering materials. We can encapsulate drugs at high concentration. We can even encapsulate very fragile drugs like genes or fragments of genes. We can decorate the surface with amphiphilic molecules, and so we can add targeting agents that make the particles smart, that is, able to detect what cell they ought to enter and only enter those cells. And this can be done with a high degree of precision at this point. As a result of that, we've been able to publish a lot of papers over the last few years, and this is, as you know, one of the metrics of success for academics is publishing papers, and we've been very successful in that regard. But more importantly, I think we've shown that these materials can carry into cells genes encoded in DNA, small fragments like siRNA, molecules that have the ability to silence specific genes inside cells, and peptide nucleic acids, which is an interesting class of compounds. And I'm going to describe that in the last example. And this is a collaboration with a colleague at Yale named Peter Glaser. Peter is a physician and a scientist and an expert in repair of DNA. And he discovered several years ago that you could design these peptide nucleic acids so that they will bind specifically to defined regions of DNA in a gene within a chromosome inside a cell. And if this DNA binds to a gene, it initiates within the cell, through natural mechanisms, a process of DNA repair. And if you deliver the PNA together with a donor DNA, sometimes the DNA will be repaired not using the natural DNA template, but using your donor DNA template instead. And what's the significance of this? Well, if you've identified a gene that has a defect in it, say here in the genomic DNA where there's a CTG region, and that's not right, it's supposed to be CAG, then Peter can design a PNA that will bind to your chromosome near the CTG. If you deliver that with a donor DNA that contains the correct sequence, the cell will fix itself, and the gene defect will be repaired. Now, the problem is that these molecules are very difficult to deliver in the body. They're very difficult to deliver into cells. But it turns out that if we package them in the nanoparticles I've been describing, then you can just sprinkle these nanoparticles on cells. The nanoparticles will enter, and the molecules will be released, and they'll do the gene editing inside the cell. And I show you an example here with hematopoietic stem cells that have been isolated. Normally they're in bone marrow. And there are many genetic defects of the blood, including sickle cell anemia and beta thalassemia, where the genetic defect is well known, but they've resisted treatments. We can take blood from patients. We can culture the cells and sprinkle these nanoparticles over them and correct the genes and make them function normally again. And now these cells could be reintroduced back into the patient. Since we've fixed the chromosome, all the progeny of these cells will contain the repair. And so these cells would repopulate the patient with normal cells. Even more remarkably, we found that these particles can work in other settings. And cystic fibrosis is a not uncommon a genetic disease in this country, a disease that has resisted treatment and for which patients with cystic fibrosis don't have long lifespans, even with the best medical treatment. We found we could make these particles. This is a collaboration with Marie Egan, who's the head of the Cystic Fibrosis Center at Yale. That we make these tiny particles with PNA and DNA that Peter Glaser has designed that will fix the most common defect in the cystic fibrosis gene. And the top panel here shows that if we have cells from a cystic fibrosis patient and we sprinkle the particles on the cells in culture, that we can both repair the gene and make it functional. We make it do what it's not doing properly. But the bottom panel shows something even more impressive, I think, that if we give these particles to mice, we let them breathe the particles into their lung, that the particles will reach the deep parts of their lung, they'll enter their airway cells, they'll correct the genes within those airway cells, and you can convert mice that have cystic fibrosis into mice whose airway cells start to function normally again. And I think the potential impact of this is enormous. And you could start to think, I'm sure you're also thinking about other genetic diseases where approaches like this might be useful. Well, I've had the great fortune of being a faculty member at 3 terrific universities, and I've had great students and fellows and undergraduate students and medical residents and students who've worked with me on these projects, and I could not thank them enough. And for me, one of the great pleasures is having a student who comes and spends some time in my laboratory, some time in my classroom, and then goes on to do even better things afterwards. And I could tell you stories about all these people in that regard. And they're not a bad-looking bunch either. This is a recent photo of the lab group. These are my sons, Alex and Zach. The little one is Zach. The bigger one is Alex. I show you this picture here for obvious reasons. It was taken a few years ago when we had a beautiful trip camping throughout the Dakotas. And we did stray into North Dakota occasionally. But it truly is more beautiful here. Zach is now a sophomore at the University of Toronto, where he's studying computer engineering, and Alex is a graduate student at Tulane University, where he's studying chemical engineering. This is my wife, Christina, and our daughter, Noah Marie. Noah just turned 2 years old. Christina sends her regrets. She very much wanted to be here, but wasn't able to. But I've been blessed with a delightful family. I borrowed this last image from your website. I like it. I like both the picture of the campus, and I had a beautiful day wandering around the campus. Early in the day, it was sunny. It was gorgeous. And I had terrific conversations with students and faculty, and got a sense for the spirit of the people here. And I would say the sense of the spirit is excellent. The spirit is high. It's collaborative. People are working hard and enjoying it. All those things that President Wilson talked about, in my experience today, are true. I gave a seminar in chemical engineering, and nobody fell asleep. And everybody, there was a line of people asking great questions afterwards. It was really a fabulous experience. And I like the slogan, "Soar Higher." It's really brilliant. In 2012, I got an email asking me to call the president of the South Dakota School of Mines and giving me his cell phone number. And I did, and President Wharton answered the phone and told me that I had the high honor of receiving the 2014 Mines Medal. We had a great conversation. I could tell from even over the phone that he's a very gracious and caring man, and I appreciated our conversation. He told me about his vision for the School of Mines and what he was trying to accomplish with the Mines Medal, and he was persuasive and frankly inspirational. And so I was greatly honored to receive it and to have a chance to talk to him about what it meant to him, and very sad to find out a short time after that he had passed away. And so a great loss to your community, I'm sure, but I feel privileged to have been able to share a little conversation with him. And I've met your new President Wilson, and I'm greatly impressed with her. So I can also say that you are blessed with leadership here, and you need good leadership in order to be successful. You have fabulous students and faculty. You have a terrific mission. Your idea of keeping the student-to-faculty ratio low so that students can develop relationships with faculty is critically important for their success, and so I applaud you on that. You're doing great things here, things that are important to the future of the state and to the nation, things that are bound to be influential, and I just encourage you to keep doing it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman, for joining us this evening and for accepting this award in honor of your outstanding achievements. Before concluding, I would like to personally thank the university staff of the Office of the President and University Relations, the School of Mines Foundation, and Aramark for all of your efforts in making this evening's event very special. And finally, thank all of you for being with us to celebrate landmark scientific achievements and supporting a bright future for the School of Mines. Please welcome back to the stage our MC, Helene Duhamel.
Thank you, President Wilson. Congratulations, Dr. Saltzman. At this time, I would like to call Jessica Kern and Melinda Mansfield from Birch Travel to please come forward for our raffle prize drawing. This raffle was started as an effort to raise $25,000 for scholarships. Birch Travel, who is recognized as the School of Mines' preferred travel agency this year, provided a $3,000 certificate that can be used anywhere in the world from any city that serves Delta Airlines. And we will also be drawing for a 51-inch HD TV and an Apple iPad mini. We'd like to thank the members of the Mines family for assisting us with the sales of the raffle tickets. At this time, Jessica and Melinda will draw the names of the lucky winners. And if the winners are present this evening, please come forward to receive your certificate and the instructions on how you can claim these prizes. The winner for the iPad first is
Lisa DeVries.
Woo! It sounded like Lisa was here. Come on up, Lisa. Congratulations. And the winner of the HD TV is
Carolyn Fossey.
Well, she is not here, but she'll be thrilled. That's wonderful. And the winner of our grand prize travel package is
Mike Keegan.
Here he is. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Burst Travel, thank you. And we now request that you stand and remain standing until the colors have been retired.
Permission to retire colors.
Retire the colors.
Forward, march. Left, left.
On behalf of the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, thank you so much for supporting the university and making another very successful event. Have a wonderful evening. Drive carefully.